will be shocked when you learn about the 10 most brutal weapons of the Roman Empire. Get ready to learn something that will change your perception of history. The Roman Empire was built not only on laws and aqueducts, but also on the principles of engineering perfected in the art of war. Every weapon created by Roman craftsmen was not just a tool for battle. It was a calibrated mechanism designed for suppression, control, and domination. We are accustomed to thinking of the Roman army as a monolithic force marching under the banners of eagles. But behind the success of each legion was technology that was centuries ahead of its time. These instruments of war were so well thought out and effective that their use left the enemy with virtually no chance. We will delve into the world of Roman weapons engineering to understand how steel, wood, and human ingenuity created the most powerful military machine of antiquity. We will examine 10 of the most significant weapons, each of which was a response to a specific challenge of the time. Watch this video to the end, and you will learn how a simple engineering solution in the design of a single spear made it possible to disarm entire armies before hand-to-hand combat even began. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of the Roman defensive lines, which is rarely mentioned in popular sources. This amazing weapon did not have a sharp blade for cutting, it did not need to be thrown with force at the enemy, and it did not require any special physical strength or years of combat experience from an ordinary soldier to use. But its destructive effect on the real battlefield was so powerful and impressive that its mere presence could instantly stop the rapid attack of the enemy's best heavy cavalry and turn entire well-trained units of enemy infantry into a panicked retreat. This simple device changed the course of battles without a single sword stroke. We are talking about the tribulus, better known to the people as garlic or hedgehog thorn because of its characteristic shape. It was a truly ingenious engineering device in its elegant simplicity, consisting of 4 sharp metal spikes firmly welded or fastened together at a central point at specific angles. No matter how this clever design fell to the ground when thrown, one of the 4 spikes would always be mathematically positioned vertically upward, ready to meet any person or animal who carelessly stepped on it. This geometric feature made the weapon versatile and did not require precise placement. The process of manufacturing tribulus was incredibly simple, fast, and extremely cheap, which allowed the Roman army to produce them in truly enormous quantities for mass use. An ordinary camp blacksmith of average skill could produce several hundred or even thousands of such devices in a single working day from metal scraps and waste that would otherwise have been discarded. This availability and low cost made tribulae the ideal weapon for mass use in large areas around fortifications, where thousands of units were required. The army could afford to cover huge areas with them without significant expenditure from the budget. The tactical use of tribulus in Roman military practice was surprisingly diverse and extremely effective in various situations. Experienced legionaries systematically scattered them in a thick layer on open fields in front of their fortifications and ramparts, creating virtually invisible minefields of antiquity that were impossible to detect from a distance. They were also widely used to reliably protect the vulnerable flanks of Roman formations, to prevent dangerous encirclement by fast enemy cavalry, or deliberately thrown in the path of a retreating defeated enemy to slow their movement as much as possible and inflict additional serious damage. Each use was carefully thought out and had a specific tactical purpose. For enemy infantry, the tribulus was a serious and extremely unpleasant hindrance, forcing attacking soldiers to constantly look down at their feet in search of thorns, rather than forward at the enemy and the target of the attack, which inevitably disrupted the tight battle formation and significantly slowed the pace of the advance. But this cunning weapon was a real deadly curse for the cavalry, the main striking force of many armies. A warhorse that unexpectedly stepped on a sharp spike with its hoof was instantly incapacitated by pain, threw off its rider, and created a chain reaction of panic and chaos in the dense ranks of attacking horsemen. The panic of the horses spread quickly, destroying the organized attack in a matter of seconds. The psychological effect of the mass use of tribulus was truly enormous and sometimes exceeded the physical damage. The constant fear of an invisible threat hidden in tall grass or dust seriously hampered the enemy's will and fighting spirit even before the battle began. The mere knowledge that the ground in front of the impregnable Roman positions was densely strewn with sharp thorns very often forced cautious enemy commanders to completely abandon their plans for a direct frontal attack and instead seek long detours, losing precious time and tactical initiative. In this way, the Romans dictated the terms of battle without firing a single shot. This passive but incredibly effective weapon perfectly reflected the characteristic Roman rational approach to warfare. Maximum combat effectiveness with minimum material costs and losses. Once installed, the tribulus required no active personal involvement from the legionnaire in direct combat. It worked completely on its own around the clock, tirelessly turning the ground itself into a reliable ally of the Roman army and a deadly trap for all its numerous enemies. It was a weapon that fought for Rome even when the soldiers were sleeping or resting in camp. In the specific conditions of prolonged defense of a fortified camp or during a protracted siege of enemy fortresses, tribulus became an absolutely indispensable tactical tool for commanders. They were densely scattered in dangerous gaps in the fortress walls, at the foot of the enemy's high siege towers, and on all possible approaches. Any attempt at a surprise night assault in the dark or a quick sortie by the besieged enemy inevitably encountered this silent but virtually insurmountable barrier, which thwarted their plans of attack. Even a small number of tribulations at a critical point could disrupt a carefully planned enemy operation. This modest weapon never shone in solemn military parades or was celebrated in heroic poems about great battles, but its real contribution to the numerous victories of mighty Rome was truly colossal and underestimated by history. It effectively preserved the precious lives of Roman legionaries, allowing them to successfully repel fierce attacks by numerically superior enemy forces with minimal losses of their own manpower. The tribulus was a silent, quiet guardian of the Roman borders for centuries, a vivid embodiment of military cunning, engineering thought, and practicality. It proved that it is not only brute force that wins, but also the intelligent application of simple solutions. This weapon was created by Roman engineers not for empty glory and honors, but solely for real victory, achieved through sharp minds and calculation, not just brute physical strength and bravery. Do you think it is fair to call such a hidden passive weapon dishonest or a cunning method of warfare? Or are all means equally good for achieving victory on the brutal battlefield? Share your informed opinion in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about the weapon that conquered half the world for Rome? The pilum was no ordinary spear. It was a high-tech weapon for its time, designed with one main purpose in mind: to neutralize the enemy's main advantage, their shield, and turn a protected warrior into a defenseless target before hand-to-hand combat even began. The design of the pilum was unique and consisted of two parts: a long wooden shaft and an even longer thin metal tip. The total length of the spear reached 2 meters. It was this disproportionately long and thin metal part that was the main secret of its effectiveness. The secret lay in the material and the method of attachment. The tip was made of soft, unhardened iron. It was attached to the shaft in such a way that after hitting the target, especially the enemy's sturdy wooden shield, the thin iron rod bent under the weight of the shaft. The tactics of using pilla were perfected to the point of automatism. Before clashing with the enemy, the first row of legionnaires, on command, made a volley throw. A veritable shower of hundreds of heavy spears rained down on the enemy, creating an insurmountable barrier. When a pilum hit a shield, several things happened at once. First, its sharp, hardened tip easily pierced the wood. Second, as we have already mentioned, the long, flexible shaft immediately bent, making it impossible to quickly pull the spear out of the shield in the heat of battle. The enemy found himself in a hopeless situation. His shield, weighed down by a 2-meter spear with a shaft dangling at the end, became incredibly cumbersome and practically useless. The warrior was forced to either abandon his main element of defense or try to fight with one hand, dragging the awkward structure along the ground. Moreover, the curved shaft made the pilum a disposable weapon within a single battle. The enemy could not simply pull it out and throw it back at the Romans. It was an ingenious engineering solution that disarmed the enemy and prevented them from using Roman weapons against themselves. The psychological effect of a volley of pila was stunning. Imagine a wall of enemy shields that in a few seconds turns into a disorderly pile of useless boards with curved spears sticking out of them. The enemy's morale was undermined before they even had a chance to strike a single blow. After the pylons had done their job, the legionaries with their short swords or gladiuses went into action. They attacked an enemy that was already demoralized and defenseless. This tactic, known as pilum gladius, became the hallmark of the Roman army and the key to its many victories. Which element of the pilum's design do you consider the most revolutionary? Its ability to pierce shields, or the fact that it bent, preventing it from being reused? But what if I told you that there was a weapon that forced the Romans themselves to redesign their armor in horror because their standard protection proved completely useless against it? The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that the invincible Roman army was not always invulnerable. There was a weapon that struck primitive terror into the hearts of legionnaires when they encountered it on the battlefield. It was so effective that it forced Roman engineers to urgently modernize standard armor in order to at least somehow protect soldiers from its devastating blows. This weapon was called the phalanx, and it was not Roman. It was used by the Dacians, fierce warriors from the territory of modern Romania, who became one of Rome's most formidable enemies. The phalanx was a long, forward-curved blade, sharpened on the inside, which was mounted on a wooden handle. There were two versions of this weapon. The one-handed version resembled a large sickle and was used to deliver quick cutting blows. But the real nightmare for the legionaries was the two-handed phalanx, which together with the handle could exceed a man's height. The secret of its terrifying effectiveness lay in physics. The forward curved shape of the blade concentrated all the force of the blow at a single point at its tip. This, combined with the enormous leverage of the two-handed handle, allowed the Dacian warrior to deliver blows of monstrous force that no Roman defense could withstand. The standard Roman helmet of the cullis, or imperial Gallic type, was powerless against the phalanx. A powerful blow from above could split the helmet, or worse, slip off it and inflict a deep wound to the shoulder or neck. Legionnaires, accustomed to having their heads well protected, were shocked. The famous Roman shield, the scutum, was no less vulnerable. The phalanx did not try to pierce it. Its curved blade allowed the Dacian to strike from behind the shield, literally hooking the arm, leg, or head of a legionary who was trying to take cover behind his defense. A direct confrontation with a warrior armed with a phalanx was deadly dangerous. Roman armor, the lorica segmentata, consisting of metal plates, also did not always withstand the blow. The blade could tear the plate fastenings or cause damage to unprotected areas, such as the arms or upper chest. The Romans suffered such heavy losses in the wars with the Dacians that immediate and radical measures were required. During Emperor Trajan's Dacian campaigns, legionaries began to receive modified equipment. Additional transverse iron strips were welded onto their helmets to strengthen protection against blows from above. Special greaves and bracers were also introduced, which had not previously been a standard part of a legionnaire's equipment. This was a direct acknowledgement that the existing protection was not up to the threat. The Roman military machine, which had always dictated its terms, was forced to adapt to the weapons of the barbarians. The history of the phalanx is a unique case where the enemy's weapon had a direct impact on the evolution of Roman military equipment. It proved that even the most perfect army can be vulnerable. The phalanx went down in history as one of the few weapons that forced Rome not only to fight, but to fear and change. What if I told you that everything you believed about the legionnaire's main weapon is not entirely true? The gladius, or Roman short sword, was not invented in Rome. This blade, which became a symbol of Roman domination, was borrowed from their sworn enemies, the Celtiberian tribes of Spain, and it was its unique characteristics that made it the ideal weapon for Roman tactics. Early Roman swords were similar to Greek xiphos and were designed primarily for slashing blows. However, during the wars in Spain, the Romans encountered a short, wide, and incredibly effective sword that was equally well suited for both cutting and stabbing. They quickly appreciated its advantages and adopted it, naming it Gladius Hispaniensis, Spanish sword. The main feature of the gladius was its shape. The wide leaf-shaped blade with a long, sharp point was perfectly balanced. Its length, about 50-60 centimeters, made it ideal for use in close formation, where there was simply no room for a longsword to swing. Roman combat tactics were built around a dense formation of legionaries, sheltered behind a wall of large scutum shields. In this formation, it was impossible to deliver sweeping, slashing blows. A legionary would step forward from behind his shield, deliver a quick thrust, and immediately return to the protection of the formation. The gladius was created specifically for this type of strike. Its weight and balance allowed for lightning-fast thrusts aimed at the enemy's unprotected parts of the body, the stomach, throat, and thighs. Roman instructors taught soldiers that a thrust wound, even a shallow one, was much more dangerous and effective in incapacitating the enemy than a cut. The strength of this sword was legendary. It was made of high-quality steel, which the Romans learned to produce by borrowing technology from the Spanish. The combination of hard cutting edges and a softer, more elastic core made the blade resistant to breakage in the most heated battles. The hilt of the gladius was also carefully designed. The large spherical pommel served as a counterweight to the blade, improving balance. The handle, often made of bone or wood, had finger grooves, ensuring a secure and comfortable grip, even in hands wet with sweat. The gladius was not just a weapon, but part of a system. Its effectiveness was inextricably linked to the scutum, the pilum, and the strict discipline of the legionaries. It was this combination, and not just the sword itself, that brought the Romans victory on battlefields throughout the known world. This sword was so successful that it served in the Roman army for several centuries, undergoing only minor changes. It became a true symbol of the legionary, embodying his discipline, training, and deadly effectiveness in close combat. The gladius was a professional weapon, designed not for spectacular duels, but for methodical and ruthless work as part of a fighting machine. Its short blade delivered a death sentence to hundreds of thousands of Rome's enemies. What do you think was the main secret to the gladius' success? The quality of its steel or the tactics used to wield it? In the next chapter, we will look at its smaller but no less dangerous brother, which became famous not on the battlefield, but in the dark alleys and halls of the Senate. The pugio was the personal, individual weapon of the Roman soldier, his last chance for salvation in critical combat, and a faithful and reliable companion in everyday military life. This compact dagger was not intended for organized combat in the dense ranks of the legion. Its true element was sudden bloody clashes at close range, quiet night raids behind enemy lines, and, as the turbulent history of Rome clearly showed, dangerous political conspiracies in the Senate. Its characteristic wide, leaf-shaped blade was specially designed by experienced armorers to deliver a single, but maximally effective and deadly thrust to the enemy's vital organs. The shape of the blade ensured deep penetration into the body. The sophisticated design of the pugio was carefully developed to ensure maximum strength and reliability in extreme combat conditions. The massive blade, often ranging from 18 to 28 centimeters in length depending on the period and region of manufacture, was noticeably wide at the base of the hilt and tapered sharply and smoothly to a sharp, deadly point. Often, a pronounced stiffening rib ran along the entire length of the center of the blade, which not only significantly increased its resistance to breaking when striking bone, but also allowed it to inflict more serious lacerations that healed poorly. This design made the dagger virtually unbreakable even under heavy blows and rough handling. The dagger's hilt was its most distinctive feature, setting the pugio apart from other types of weapons. Unlike the gladius sword with a composite hilt, it was very often made entirely of durable metal, bronze or iron, and formed a single inseparable whole with the blade without any joints. This made the entire structure incredibly reliable and durable. The hilt could not physically break under load or unexpectedly separate from the blade at the most inopportune critical moment of combat. The all-metal construction could withstand enormous loads and serve for decades without repair. The pugio was not only a utilitarian weapon for killing, but also an important indicator of its owner's social status in the military hierarchy. The expensive daggers of centurions and high-ranking legion officers were often richly decorated with precious silver, colored enamel, and skillful inlays of gold or bronze with floral ornaments. The scabbards, skillfully made of sheet metal and tan leather, were also true works of applied art, clearly demonstrating the high rank and material wealth of their owner to everyone around them. The richer the decoration, the higher the officer's status in the army hierarchy. Despite its prestigious status and decorative function, the Pugio remained primarily a functional combat weapon designed for killing. In real combat, it was actively used in critical situations when the Legionnaire's main weapon, the gladius, was irretrievably lost in battle or broken from a blow. In the confines of close combat, when the enemy broke through the ranks and got close to the body, a short and very maneuverable dagger was much more convenient and effective than a longsword for quick strikes. Its compactness allowed it to be used in confined spaces where sword swings were impossible. Roman soldiers traditionally carried the Pugio on their left side on a special belt, unlike the gladius, which was carried on the right side or behind the back. This thoughtful arrangement allowed the dagger to be quickly drawn from its sheath with the left hand, without interfering with the active work of the right hand, which constantly held the main sword for attack. This effective system of carrying weapons on both sides ensured instant access to a spare weapon in any situation without the need to grab it. Both of the soldiers' hands were constantly armed and ready for battle. However, the Pugio gained its darkest and saddest fame in history, not in the open fields of large-scale battles with barbarians. It was this particular type of compact dagger that became the deadly weapon of a group of conspiratorial senators who brutally murdered the dictator Gaius Julius Caesar on that fateful day of the Ides of March in 44 BC. It was easy to hide under the folds of a wide toga without arousing suspicion, and the sharp, deadly blade left the victim absolutely no chance of survival after multiple blows. Caesar received 23 stab wounds from the conspirators' Pugio. After this tragic historical event, the Pugio became firmly associated in the collective consciousness of the Romans with betrayal, treachery, and secret political conspiracies against the authorities. However, for the ordinary legionnaire, it always remained something much more than just an instrument of murder. It was an important symbol of his personal readiness to fight to the end without surrender, his individual tool for survival in a cruel and merciless world of constant war and violence. The Pugio was part of a soldier's identity and his professional pride. The process of making a high-quality Pugio required a very high level of skill and many years of experience working with metal. Experienced blacksmiths who specialized exclusively in the production of this complex weapon were highly valued in Roman society and were well paid. The creation of a durable, perfectly balanced blade with an elaborately decorated hilt and high-quality scabbard was a true art form, passed down from master to apprentice. A good Pugio could cost several months' worth of a soldier's pay. It was simultaneously a deadly weapon for close combat, an exquisite work of applied art, an important symbol of the military status of its owner, and a dangerous tool for political conspirators operating in the shadows. This amazing duality and versatility makes it one of the most interesting and significant artifacts of the rich Roman military era, deserving of detailed study by historians. Guess what happened when a legionnaire, hidden behind his shield, suddenly pulled a small, dart-like weapon out of it? Before the enemy had time to understand what was happening, a whole swarm of deadly projectiles flying in a high trajectory rained down on their ranks. It was a plumbata, or Martio Barbulus, spike of Mars, the secret weapon of the late Roman army. The plumba was a short javelin consisting of a wooden shaft, a metal tip, and a lead weight. It was this lead weight located at the base of the tip that was the key to its effectiveness. It gave the spear the necessary weight and momentum to fly a considerable distance and pierce the enemy's defenses. The total length of the plumba was only about 30 centimeters. This made it very compact. Legionnaires carried several such javelins, usually 5, on the inside of their shields in special mounts. The tactics for using the plumba were simple but effective. Legionnaires threw them overhand without leaving their tight formation and remaining under the protection of their shields. This allowed them to unleash a sudden and unexpected hail of projectiles on the advancing enemy without breaking the integrity of the defensive line. The flight range of such a dart could reach 30-60 meters, which was comparable to the flight range of an arrow from a bow. At the same time, its use did not require long training. Any legionnaire could effectively throw plumba after a short training session. The lead weight not only increased the range, but also gave the dart considerable penetrating power. Despite its small size, the plumba was capable of piercing light armor or inflicting serious damage on a warrior unprotected by armor. It was the ideal weapon for disrupting the ranks of the advancing infantry. The psychological effect of using this weapon was very strong. An enemy approaching the Roman formation expected a volley of pilums, but instead received a swarm of small but dangerous javelins flying from an unexpected direction. This caused confusion and disarray, undermining the attacker's resolve. The plumbata was not a weapon of decisive blow, but of exhaustion and demoralization. Its task was to inflict damage, slow down, and disorganize the enemy while still approaching. It was an excellent addition to the standard equipment of a legionnaire, expanding his tactical capabilities. The historian Vegetius, describing the army of the late 4th century, spoke with admiration of the legionaries armed with pluma. He believed that they performed the function of archers while remaining heavy infantry. This versatility made units equipped with such weapons particularly dangerous. Do you think the plumbata was an attempt to compensate for the lack of archers in the late Roman army, or an independent tactical innovation? In the next chapter, we will talk about a weapon that did not need to be thrown but turned defense into offense. The Roman shield, the scutum, was not just a means of defense. It was a multifunctional weapon, the basis of all Roman tactics, and a symbol of the legion's indestructibility. Its unique design and method of use turned a defensive item into an effective offensive tool capable of crushing enemy formations. The scutum was a large, full-length shield, curved rectangular or oval in shape. It was made of several layers of glued wood, covered with canvas and leather, and its edges were reinforced with metal. This multi-layered structure made it durable, yet light enough for soldiers to carry during long marches. The central part of the shield was the umbo, a large metal hemisphere. It not only protected the legionnaire's arm holding the shield, but also served as a powerful offensive element. A blow with the umbo to the enemy's face or chest could easily knock him off his feet and incapacitate him. The curved shape of the scutum was an ingenious engineering solution. It allowed the shield to effectively deflect blows and arrows, causing them to slide off to the side rather than transferring all the energy of the blow to the soldier's arm. In addition, this shape allowed the legionaries to stand close together, forming a solid wall. It was this wall of shields that formed the basis of the Roman battle formation. Soldiers took cover behind it, as if behind a fortress parapet, delivering short stabbing blows with their gladiuses from behind it. It was practically impossible to break through such a formation. But the scutum was not only used for passive defense. Legionnaires were taught to attack with their shields. They would step forward and push their opponent with all their body weight, pressing against them with their shields. This blow could knock the enemy off balance, open them up to a sword attack, or simply knock them off their feet. The most famous tactical formation using the scutum was the tortoise, testudo. The legionaries in the front row held their shields in front of them, while those in the back rows held them above their heads, creating a solid armor that protected the unit from projectiles thrown from above. This formation allowed the Romans to safely approach the walls of enemy cities under a hail of arrows and stones. The weight of the shield, about 10 kilograms, required great physical strength and endurance from the soldier. Training with it was exhausting, but it turned the legionnaire into a real athlete, capable of effectively controlling his main means of defense and attack. The front side of the scutum was decorated with the legion's emblems: lightning bolts, wings, and wreaths. These symbols not only helped soldiers orient themselves in the heat of battle, but also exerted strong psychological pressure on the enemy. The sight of an approaching wall of shields decorated with menacing symbols inspired awe. The scutum was the heart of the legion. It provided protection, served as a weapon, and shaped tactics. Losing a shield was considered the greatest shame for a soldier, as it meant not only his personal vulnerability, but also a breach in the impenetrable wall of the entire unit. The ballista was the pinnacle of ancient military engineering, a true work of art that combined mathematical precision with monstrous destructive power. It was not a simple catapult for throwing stones. It was a huge, high-precision crossbow capable of sending heavy arrows or stone projectiles hundreds of meters with incredible accuracy for its time. The ballista's operating principle was based on torsional energy. Its power did not lie in the flexibility of the bow, as in a conventional crossbow, but in the energy of twisted bundles of ropes or animal sinews. These bundles, called torsion bars, accumulated a huge amount of potential energy when stretched. The design was complex and required the highest level of skill from engineers and craftsmen. Two vertical frames, each with a powerful torsion, spring attached, were connected to movable levers. When the levers were pulled back with a winch, the sinews were twisted to their limit, and when the trigger mechanism released them, they returned to their original position with tremendous force, sending the projectile forward. The Romans perfected the design of the ballista. They created machines of various sizes, from small scorpions that could be operated by 1 or 2 legionaries and were used as field artillery, to giant siege engines that fired huge boulders and were capable of breaching fortress walls. The accuracy of the ballista was legendary. An experienced calculation could hit a target the size of a person at a distance of several hundred meters. This made it the ideal weapon for destroying enemy commanders, disabling enemy siege engines, or suppressing defenders on the walls. In field battles, ballistas set up on hills or in fortified camps provided tremendous support to the infantry. They could fire accurately at the most dangerous parts of the enemy formation, causing confusion and breaching its defenses even before the main attack began. During sieges, ballistas were indispensable. They cleared the walls of defenders, allowing assault teams to approach with ladders or roll up siege towers. Special incendiary arrows fired from ballistas caused fires in besieged cities, undermining their ability to resist. Each legion had its own artillery park, usually about 60 scorpions and 10 heavy ballistas. This made the legion an autonomous combat unit capable of performing any task, from field battles to complex sieges, without having to wait for specialized engineering units to arrive. Operating and aiming a ballista required a deep knowledge of mathematics and ballistics. Artillerymen, or ballistari, were the elite of the engineering corps. They knew how to calculate the trajectory of a projectile, make corrections for wind and distance, and ensure the maximum effectiveness of their formidable weapon. The ballista was the embodiment of the Roman approach to warfare, technological superiority multiplied by rigorous calculation and discipline. It allowed combat tasks to be accomplished from a distance, minimizing casualties among their own soldiers. It was a weapon that defeated the enemy before they could even reach a legionnaire with their sword. If the ballista was the scalpel of the Roman army, then the onager was its sledgehammer. This powerful siege engine was not particularly accurate, but its task was not to hit specific targets, but to destroy. The onager fired huge stone balls along a high parabolic trajectory, raining down stones weighing tens of kilograms on enemy fortifications and troop concentrations. The name onager translates as wild donkey, and it was given to the machine because of the characteristic lying down jerk it made after firing. Like the ballista, the onager was a torsion weapon, but unlike the ballista, it had only one, but very large horizontal bundle of twisted wires. A single long throwing lever was inserted into this torsion spring. With the help of a powerful winch, the lever was pulled down, almost to a horizontal position, twisting the strands to the limit. At the end of the lever was a sling or bowl in which the projectile was placed, usually a large, roughly hewn stone. When the trigger mechanism released the lever, the energy stored in the torsion bar threw it upward with tremendous force. The lever hit a special crossbar on the frame, stopping abruptly, and the projectile flew out of the sling by inertia and flew toward the target. This impact caused the entire machine to jump. The main purpose of the onager was to bombard enemy cities and fortresses. Its projectiles could not penetrate thick stone walls, but they were extremely effective at destroying roofs, battlements, and wooden fortifications. Several onagers, firing methodically, could turn a thriving city into smoking ruins in a matter of days. The psychological effect of the bombardment was no less important than the physical destruction. Imagine the horror of the defenders and inhabitants of the city, with huge boulders constantly falling from the sky. The whistling sound of flying stones and the roar of their fall undermined morale and the will to resist. Onagers were also used to throw other types of projectiles. Clay pots with a combustible mixture could be placed in the sling, creating a primitive analog of napalm. Sometimes they were used for biological warfare. throwing animal remains into the besieged city to cause epidemics. Due to their low accuracy, onagers were ineffective in field battles. They were intended exclusively for positional siege warfare. Their transportation and assembly on site was a difficult task that required the efforts of an entire engineering unit. The onager was a weapon of intimidation and attrition. Its task was not to take a fortress quickly, but to destroy it slowly and methodically, breaking the will of the defenders and forcing them to surrender. It was a crude but very effective tool for waging total war in the Roman style. Roman engineers constantly improved the design of the onager, creating machines of different calibers. The largest of them could throw stones weighing up to 80 kilograms at a distance of up to 400 meters. The power of these machines was such that they remained in service with the armies even after the fall of Rome, virtually unchanged until the advent of gunpowder artillery. The Romans were not natural sailors. Their strength lay on land in the iron discipline of their legions. At the beginning of the First Punic War, they faced the powerful Carthage, which ruled the seas. To win, Rome needed to find a way to transfer the land war to the decks of enemy ships, and the Corvus was that way. The Corvus, or Raven, was an ingenious yet simple boarding bridge. It was a heavy wooden ramp, about 11 meters long and just over a meter wide. A large, sharp metal spike, resembling a raven's beak, was attached to its underside, which gave it its name. This device was installed on the bow of a Roman ship and could rotate freely. With the help of a system of blocks and winches, the bridge was held in a vertical or inclined position. When an enemy ship came close enough, the Romans slammed the Corvus onto its deck with force. The heavy spike pierced the deck planks, locking the two ships together. The Carthaginian ship, more maneuverable and faster, lost its main advantage. It could no longer escape the Romans or ram them. It was caught in a deadly trap. As soon as the bridge was lowered and the ships were locked together, the second phase began. Roman legionaries rushed across this improvised bridge onto the enemy's deck. The naval battle instantly turned into a land battle, in which the Romans were unsurpassed masters. Disciplined and well-armed soldiers, accustomed to fighting in formation, easily prevailed over the Carthaginian sailors, who were not trained in hand-to-hand combat. The Corvus turned every Roman ship into a floating fortress, delivering a squad of professional infantrymen aboard the enemy. The success of this device was staggering. In the Battle of Mylas in 260 BC, the Roman fleet, which had not previously achieved any significant victories, defeated the Carthaginians thanks to the use of corvuses. This victory changed the course of the war and laid the foundations for Rome's future naval power. However, the Corvus also had serious drawbacks. It was very heavy and cumbersome, which impaired the stability and seaworthiness of ships. In heavy storms, ships equipped with corvuses became uncontrollable and often sank. After Rome achieved dominance at sea and its sailors gained experience, the Corvus was gradually abandoned. Roman admirals learned to defeat the Carthaginians without it, using more traditional naval tactics. But this device fulfilled its historical role brilliantly. The Corvus is a striking example of Roman pragmatism and the ability to come up with unconventional solutions. Faced with an opponent superior in experience, they did not try to beat him at his own game. Instead, they changed the rules themselves, turning naval combat into what they knew best, a battle of legions. We have looked at 10 weapons that were not just instruments of war, but embodiments of Roman genius. From the simple but cunning tribulus to the most complex siege engines, each of these inventions was designed to solve a specific problem and did so with ruthless efficiency. They show that Rome's strength lay not only in the bravery of its soldiers, but also in its technological superiority and ability to turn engineering ideas into tactical advantages. These weapons were products of their time, but the principles behind their design, versatility, psychological pressure, a systematic approach, remain relevant in military affairs to this day. By studying them, we are studying not just the history of weapons, but the history of the thinking that built one of the greatest empires in human history. Which of these Roman weapons do you think was the most ingenious from an engineering point of view? Suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new research into military technologies of the past.